Well, this is a little bit unfair. I have to preach with food in the back. I know you're all assembled here just because of my great sermons, but this is going a little too far. I got some special thoughts because I got 2 granddaughters over here and a grandson, the one that lives with me. And I know there's others out here, but Lainey and Mariah, I'll tell you this, because you hear it from Grandpa, you hear it from Grandma. You can look around in this room and you'll see other people who believe in Jesus Christ. Not just Grandpa, not just Grandma. And when you go back home, there's other people who assemble on the first day of the week who believe that Jesus Christ came out of the grave. So you don't have to just take my word. When you go home, find somebody who believes that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and it will pay you big dividends. And you don't have to say, well, that's just my grandpa. He's just old hat. You see all them young ones over there? They believe it. You believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God? Amen. Amen. So I witnessed that to you today. When you're older, you can look back and say, well, Grandpa told me. And these people backed it up. We're in John chapter 10. And, I'm sorry, thanks, God. Yeah, so I'm going to talk more about the gate today. This whole chapter is about sheep, shepherd, gate pens, or the pen, if you will. But I'm going to set it up for just in the first 10 verses because we got to get back there to eat. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I want you to know, if you remember chapter 9, verse 40, when Jesus is all done healing the blind man, he's given, it's like a parable, but remember John teaches in dialogue. It's going back and forth, but it's like an active parable where he physically heals a blind man, but he's spiritually talking to them about being blind. To the spiritual leaders of their day, to those that were supposed to know their Bible, he said, you are blind. If you look at verse 40, they basically ask him that question. Are we blind? And Jesus says, yes, you're blind because you think you can see and you can't see because you don't accept me as the Son of God. You are blind. He jumps right into chapter 10 and he says, let me tell you about the shepherd and the sheep. Now, if you grew up in their agrarian environment, they knew all about sheep. Are there any sheep herders in here? I've never raised sheep. I'm told they're a dumb animal, but then I did some reading on them, and I know they're pretty smart. They can hear a voice, and they remember that voice. Some people say up to like 50 different voices they can remember. These people knew about raising sheep. And they knew to have sheep, you had to have a shepherd. That shepherd had to take care of those sheep. I was trying to think, you know why dumb sheep are dumb, right? If you send them in a straight line, they can't even make a U-turn. Yeah. If you don't believe that, I'll just pull the wool over your eyes. I was going to come up with some really bad jokes, but sheep, as far as I know, they need somebody to take care of them. They need someone to help them, guide them, lead them, protect them. They're not like a lion, right? They're not that ferocious animal that's going to go out there. They do protect each other, fight together, it says, but the sheep were being led astray. He's basically telling them that in chapter 9, you're blind. You're supposed to be shepherds. And that's why I didn't want to I'm not going to take this today to set it up, because we're going to get into the shepherd next week, and we'll talk all about the elders and what it means to be a shepherd and what it means to lead. So it's an important thing to lead sheep. And our elders lead sheep. You are sheep. And they lead you spiritually. And they have a grave responsibility. But again, I really want to talk more about that next week. But in this pictures of some of these verses that we'll read through, when Jesus says he's the gatekeeper, that's because in their pens they didn't have gates. And the shepherd would lay down in front of the gate. No sheep would step over him, and no wolf would go in without him protecting those sheep. That's the picture of Jesus in your life. He lays down his life for you, and he protects you. He guards you. You come in and you go out, these verses will say. And so we'll look at some of them. So let's just read some of them. Well, let me just give you another thought of mine that I was thinking about. I think as we look at these verses, I hope anyways, I hope you'll see that America is hungry for spiritual things, I believe. What scares me is that we seem to chase after a lot of different things like Native American nature worship. I was thinking about some of these things. We chase after a lot of these things in the Eastern religion. We chase after pyramid power. We chase after positive thoughts. I say that to you because in this text, I don't want to apologize for it. Jesus is going to say, I'm the gate. You must come in through that gate. The gate. He does not use a gate. He says the gate. There's only one gate into heaven. And that is through Jesus Christ. And if you go out into the world and somebody else tells you there's another gate or another way in or another way there, that's a lie. And as a gospel preacher, taking the words of Jesus Christ, I would have to tell you that he says he is the gate. The only way. And I know the world will give you all other kinds of faith that you can follow and chase after, all the religions. And I don't apologize for telling you that, because some say, oh, you're just egotistical, or you're just narrow-minded, or you're just, you're just wrong, preacher. There's no absolute truth. That's where our society has gone. It's not the way it used to be. The absolute truth is found in the Bible. The absolute truth coming from the only one that can save you, Jesus Christ. He said, I am the gate. And if you go, and this is, again, I want you to get this from the text. What he did in verse 9, he says, all you religious leaders, he's been doing it throughout the whole chapter. All you religious leaders are chasing after all the wrong things. You're false teachers. And when you leave here and you might go out in the world, somebody else might tell you that there's more than one way. No. There's one way unto God. And that is through Jesus Christ. And you cannot climb over. You cannot replace him with something else. You know, that might seem egotistical, but you think about it, or just too narrow-minded. You think if you were in a synagogue today worshiping a bunch of Jews, they would just say, oh, you Christians are okay? You think if you were with a bunch of Islamic religion, and because you worship the one God and they worship one God, that they would say, well, you Christians got it right? No. They would call you an infidel. Only three great religions that I don't know believe in one God, Christianity being one of them, all believe they're right. What you have to do for yourself is decide today, who's right? Where's the evidence? Now, this lesson isn't about the evidence, or I'd sit here and I would tell you, well, there's a whole bunch of people that saw Jesus Christ raised from the dead. We could go on and on about the scriptures. We could go on and prove to you that we're serving the one man who came back from the grave. We're serving a living God. That's what this text is all about. And so, I just do that. So, yeah. So here's the verse I want to read to you. It says, this is verse 1. Verily, truly, I tell you, Pharisees. So again, he's talking to these leaders, these Pharisees. Anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. Pretty simple. One way in, one gate, one shepherd. It's not hard to understand. Jesus is preaching to the most religious people of the day. And he's standing there saying there's one way. You might go home and turn your TV set on and hear some of the greatest speakers that don't preach the truth. All that health and wealth doctrine is not from the Bible. It's interesting, false teachers. You see, this is what he talks, some other way is a thief or a robber. You know, we're back in their day and back in our day, we're full of false teachers today. There are tons of people, and these people are gifted, talented, speak 100 times better than I do and using the English language a lot better than I do. But they twist the scriptures to make you think. I tell you this because when you get in here and Jesus says you can have abundant life or a full life, that does not mean your bank account is rich. That does not mean you live in big houses. That does not mean you drive fancy cars. Great if those blessings come to you. But the truth is, Jesus said, unless you die to yourself, you cannot live. To be a child of God, you must die. There's not a lot of people signing up for that. Our Christianity is, the reason we're different than any other religion is because we believe that we die to self and live unto the only one living and true God. That we put other people above ourselves. The problem, the reason we got all these churches in every street corner, and you might say to yourself, well, but you know what the world says? They don't serve my need. We're like chameleons. We leave here, and when we get out in the world, we change and reflect around the group we're around. They say you don't have what we need. And Jesus is teaching as he moves through this. I'm going to show you what a real disciple looks like. My sheep know my voice. My sheep listen to me. My sheep obey my commandments. My sheep live a certain way. My sheep are different than the sheep of the world. My sheep come through my gate. My sheep know me. And these false teachers, as great as they may sound, I was thinking about some ways that how would you identify a false teacher? I'll tell you one of the biggest ways that scare me the most today is when I hear people say, God speaks to me directly. When you come across somebody who tells you that he gets a vision from God or he hears God audibly, you ought to run. You hear somebody who tells you it's all about money, you ought to run. And the other one I think is big in our society today might be sexual pleasures, because it seems to be a biggie. But you want to find out about false teachers, ask them if they all want your money. Ask them if it's all about health and wealth and other things. And I don't want to name names or name groups, but the truth is, if you don't believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, you're a false teacher. You're a thief. You're a robber. And in case you don't know it, all they want to do is destroy you and kill you. Now, we say that's about Satan, but the truth is, in this story, it's more about false teachers and Pharisees. It's about those that are supposed to know their Bible who are peddling a message that is not true, that might make you happy, make you feel good, and you come here for some big, exciting moment, but then you leave. This is what Jesus is talking about. So let's see. 3, the gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. Let me ask you a question. How well do you know the voice of Jesus? I know my wife's voice. She could be in the back part of the house, and when she speaks up, I'm like, I jump to attention, I run whatever she says, and I snap to it. Because I know the general speaking. I don't ask, is that you, honey? I know that's her. Because I spend time with her. I know her intimately. How well do you know the voice of God? You ever wonder if God is speaking to you? The only way you'll know is, however, how close you get to God, right? You cannot know whether, you ever hear voices in your head, should I, shouldn't I? Kind of a scary thing. If you're hearing audible sounds, you need a rubber broom probably. But if you're wondering, I have those, sometimes I wonder, I read, I study, I see somebody in a store, I do something, I wonder, is God nudging me to do something? Somewhere I have to be able to figure out, is this a voice from God? Is it a voice from myself? I think the Bible is the number one thing we go to. I think the Bible is the thing that binds what God would say. God is not going to say anything outside the Bible. The Spirit illuminates the Word of God. But I want you to know that because you have to know the character of Jesus in order to know that you're hearing from God. You have to know what He's about, how He is, how He would deal with certain matters and situations, or you can't hear the voice. You wouldn't know if it's Him or if it's a false teacher. One of these thieves that climbed in, who's only after your money or your time. So you must know Him. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But so this is interesting. He said they won't recognize a stranger's voice, and then he said Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what He was telling them. Jesus seemed to always have a way they didn't understand what He was saying. I think it's simpler for us today. We're looking back. We got the whole message in front of us. I don't think there's anybody in here that's missing the point that Jesus said, I'm the gate. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the one who comes, who cares about you, who wants the best for you, who promises you life eternal. In fact, when he uses the word life here, he's talking about Zoe life, which is eternal life. He's not talking about a physical life. You can go home, look that up. But he's talking to you about spiritual life. So then he said, in 7, he said, therefore Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate of the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. And so again, he said, very truly I tell you, I am, another one of these I am statements, the gate. I am, going all the way back to Exodus 3, using divinity language to say, I am. This is God speaking. I am the gate. And no matter how you try to find another way in, there won't be one. Not into his sheep pen. And so this is just what he wants you to get to know. And anybody else that tells you anything is a thief and a robber. Let's see. 9 says, I am the gate. Again, he repeats it. Whoever enters through me will be saved. See, this is all about salvation, right? If you want to be saved, you got to come through the gate. That's exactly what he's teaching you. They will come in and go out and find pasture. Now, that's what we want. You want peace? You want happiness? He says, my sheep get freedom. They can come and go. And know that the good shepherd is with them wherever they find themselves. You will go out like Psalms 23 and find green pastures, right? His rod and his staff will protect you. He offers that to his sheep. If you go back, if we knew our Bibles were back in the Old Testament, look up shepherd. It's all over the place. Three. I think Jeremiah, might be Isaiah, might be Ezekiel. I hope I quoted that right, Ezra. I think it's Ezekiel. Anyways, shepherding to them was well known. They knew what it meant to shepherd. They knew what it meant to lead. And so I just want you to get that. And so they'll come in and out and find pasture. There's nobody else is going to offer you such a life as Jesus offers you. All these things that are stressing you out in the world, they don't have to. You can turn them over to Jesus. You can let him handle your burdens and your strife. You have a purpose and a meaning for life. You will find life in Jesus. A life that is much greater than what the world has to offer. Did you ever see that thing that Deion Sanders did about when somebody asked him what led you to becoming a Christian? I don't know much about Deion Sanders. I know he's coaching, but I know that message he gave about his thing. He said, I had a house that had 15,000 square feet, and I couldn't find him. I had 400, 500 pairs of shoes. I forget that. He had 400 or 500 suits. He said, I couldn't put one foot in front of my other foot without and find peace and happiness until he found Jesus. Now, I don't know his whole story, but man, I loved his message about all these things that Deion Sanders had, all the money that you could drum up, the house, the cars. He talked about all the cars he had and how miserable he was in life because he could not find the pasture that Jesus has to offer. Man, that's a guy that was living a life to the fullest, as we would call it. And the person in here don't want a 15,000 square foot home. I'll have it as long as Bobby cleans it. I don't want it if I have to clean it. I couldn't imagine the houses he had and the swimming pools and the tennis courts and the bowling alleys and the you name it, they probably had it, and he probably had a car in every garage. And yet he said he was miserable until he found Jesus. I think we can see a lot of that in the world that the liars have sold. So let's just go through these quickly. So this is what I think is in these 10, 11 verses. You had the thieves and the robbers, those that come and lie and steal. You had the shepherd, you had the sheep. Thieves and robbers, I want to get down. So you watch out for those that try to enter in the other way by Jesus. The thief comes to steal and destroy. We talked about that. The shepherd, I see there's something in here. The shepherd goes in by the gate. The shepherd is the gate. The sheep listen to his voice. I just want to spend a minute here, and then I want to close. You know, It's important to hear the voice of God. But I want to stress to you one more time that I think this is 99% of the time where you're going to hear the voice of God. I'm not going to limit that God can't speak audible because he did. But I get nervous when I do meet people that tell me, oh, God told me. My new approach to that is, okay, if God told you, then you ought to do what God told you to do, because don't ever do anything God hasn't told you to do. But that doesn't mean I have to do it unless I find it in here. And I think that's a good practice. I do think the Spirit can reveal the Word through us, can help us. You can read, he can help you understand it and all that kind of stuff. But what he's teaching in this set of scriptures is that you must hear from God. You must know his voice. And I don't think you can know his voice without spending time with him. You wouldn't do that with anybody in your family. The way you understand your wife's voice, your husband's voice, your best friend's voice is because you spent time with them. If you don't hear the voice of God, I assure you there'll be other voices contending for your time. They will find a way to weed themselves in, and you'll have other voices speaking to you. That's just the way it is. Those are thieves and robbers. They come to kill and destroy. Jesus stands in front of this crowd and he says, I'm the gate. and that's the truth. So we're going to wrap up. So what do I have on here? We're going to get to the conclusion. Whose voice are you listening to? You know, a lot of you here are Christians. I know that. I know you're listening to the voice of God. But if you're not a child of God, there's only one voice that you should be listening to. That's Jesus Christ. So if you're here this morning and we can help you, we're going to stand and sing a song. For us, that's just an invitation for you to come up and tell us how we can help you.